The day my husband handed me divorce papers in front of an entire restaurant wasn't the day. My marriage ended. It had ended long before that. I just hadn't realized I was the only one still trying to save it. What he didn't know, what no one in that dining room could have imagined, was that less than 4 hours earlier, I'd walked out of a lawyer's office carrying a secret that would change my life forever. A secret my late father had spent 23 years preparing. A secret worth $50 billion. But money wasn't the most shocking part. The most shocking part was why he had hidden everything from me, and why he made sure I would only discover the truth after losing everything I thought mattered. Stories like this aren't really about money. They're about masks, about the people who smile while waiting for you to fall, about discovering that sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't wealth. It's finally seeing people exactly as they are. My name is Naomi Carter. 3 months ago, I was just another hard-working waitress in downtown Chicago. Or at least, that's what everyone believed, including my husband. Friday nights at Bellissimo Steakhouse were always chaos. Crystal glasses clinked beneath soft jazz music. Business executives celebrated million-dollar deals. Couples toasted anniversaries. Tourists took pictures of steaks that cost more than my weekly grocery budget. And somewhere between Table 7's wine refill and Table 12's birthday dessert, I usually forgot how exhausted I was. Naomi, our manager, Mrs. Rodriguez, hurried toward me. VIP reservation just arrived. I nodded immediately. I've got it. She smiled warmly. I knew you'd say that. That was me. Always dependable. Always saying yes. Always believing hard work would eventually pay off. Some people called it determination. Others called it being naive. Looking back, they were probably both right. I balanced a tray on one hand while greeting the guests. Good evening. Welcome to Bellissimo. The older couple smiled. The man adjusted his expensive-looking glasses. You have a lovely smile. Thank you. Small compliments like that helped, especially lately, because at home, smiles had become rare. My husband, Marcus Carter, hadn't always been cold. When we met 6 years earlier, he was funny, ambitious, the kind of man who remembered little things. He knew I hated olives. He knew thunderstorms made me anxious. He used to bring me coffee before my morning shift, even when he had to work early himself. Back then, we had almost nothing. We lived in a tiny apartment where the heater barely worked. Sometimes we'd eat instant noodles together while laughing about how one day we'd own a house with a backyard. Dreams were free. Reality wasn't. As Marcus climbed the corporate ladder in a real estate investment company, something changed. Actually, someone changed. He started correcting how I spoke, then how I dressed, then who I spent time with. Eventually, he started correcting who I was. You still work as a waitress? He'd ask during parties. Not because he cared, because he was embarrassed. Our friends think I married beneath me. I laughed the first time he said it. He wasn't joking. By the time I reached 32, I had become an expert at shrinking myself, smiling through criticism, apologizing for things that weren't my fault, pretending not to notice when Marcus stayed out later and later each night. Because marriage required sacrifice, didn't it? At least, that's what I kept telling myself. Until the phone call came. My shift had barely ended when my cell phone vibrated. Unknown number. Normally I ignored those. Something made me answer. Miss Naomi Carter? Speaking. This is Attorney Harold Whitmore. His voice carried the calm confidence of someone used to delivering important news. I'm calling regarding the estate of Jonathan Brooks. The tray nearly slipped from my hands. Jonathan Brooks. My father. Or the man I hadn't spoken to since I was 9 years old. I think you've got the wrong person. No, Miss Carter. A pause. I assure you I do not. My heartbeat quickened. I was informed your father passed away last week. Silence. Not because I was heartbroken. Because I didn't know what I was supposed to feel. How do you grieve someone who disappeared while they were still alive? I didn't know. I understand. Another pause. He requested that you attend the reading of his will today. I can't. You should. Something about his tone stopped me. He left very specific instructions. What instructions? I'm afraid that discussion must happen in person. 2 hours later, I sat inside one of Chicago's oldest law firms. Dark wooden walls, leather chairs, paintings that looked older than everyone in the building. Attorney Whitmore slid a thick envelope across the polished desk. Before touching it, I asked the only question that mattered. Why did he leave? Whitmore looked uncomfortable. He believed you'd ask that before anything else. He opened another envelope. This letter is from your father. My hands trembled. The handwriting was unmistakable. Dear Naomi, if you're reading this, then I've already failed to apologize in person. Every birthday I missed. Every graduation. Every Christmas. Every tear. None of it happened because I stopped loving you. It happened because loving you required disappearing. I stopped reading. What does that mean? Whitmore folded his hands. Continue. I forced myself. The truth is far bigger than you know. Everything you believed about our family was carefully constructed. Your mother agreed because we believed it would save your life. By now, the danger is finally over. You are safe. Safe? From what? I looked up. What is this? Whitmore slowly reached for another folder. Inside were photographs. Private jets. Corporate headquarters. Luxury hotels. Massive factories. Oil platforms. Technology campuses. None of it made sense. Until I saw the company logo. Brooks Global Holdings. One of the largest private companies in the world. I stared at him. My father worked there? Whitmore's expression barely changed. No. He owned it. I laughed. Actually laughed. Because that sentence was too ridiculous to process. My father fixed air conditioners. He wanted you to believe that. No? Yes. He carefully placed financial documents before me. Company ownership. Trust agreements. Legal transfers. Everything carried official seals. Everything carried my father's name. Then, mine. I don't understand. Jonathan Brooks built one of the world's largest privately owned business empires over 35 years. My breathing became shallow. He intentionally lived under another identity whenever he spent time with you. Why? Whitmore looked toward the window. Because competitors were threatening members of his family. I shook my head repeatedly. No, he believed anonymity was your greatest protection. None of it felt real. Not until he spoke the next sentence. As sole beneficiary, he paused. You now own approximately $50 billion in assets. The room disappeared. Not literally. It simply stopped existing. 50 billion? People don't hear numbers like that. Numbers like that hear you? I think you should take some time. Whitmore offered me water. I couldn't even lift the glass. My father abandoned me. His eyes softened. He watched every school performance. What? He attended every graduation. No, you simply didn't recognize him. He handed me photographs. There I was, age 11, standing on stage singing, and in the back row, a janitor, watching. Another photo. My college graduation, across the street, a man reading a newspaper. Same face, different beard. Different clothes. Another, my wedding, a gardener trimming hedges outside the venue. It was him. He had never really left. He had simply loved me from a distance, because he believed distance would keep me alive. I cried harder than I ever had before. Not because of the money, because I'd spent 23 years believing I wasn't worth staying for. There is one more condition. Whitmore waited until I collected myself. Your father anticipated exactly what would happen after this inheritance became public. What do you mean? He instructed us not to announce anything for 72 hours. Why? He wanted you to observe the people closest to you. I frowned. I don't understand. He wrote. Whitmore unfolded another page. If people only value Naomi after learning who she truly is, then they never deserved her before. My throat tightened. What am I supposed to do? Nothing. For 3 days? Live your life. And tell no one. Not my husband. Not friends. No one. By the time I left the office, sunset painted the Chicago skyline gold. My entire world had changed. Yet somehow, nothing looked different. People still hurried down sidewalks. Taxi horns still echoed. Street musicians still played saxophone. Life continued, while mine had quietly split into before. And after, I checked my phone. 7 missed calls. Marcus. 3 text messages. Where are you? Dinner? Don't embarrass me tonight. The last message arrived seconds earlier. You're already late, I sighed. He hadn't asked if I was okay. He hadn't wondered where I'd been, only whether I was making him look bad. Some things suddenly became much easier to notice. Bellissimo was packed when I returned. Mrs. Rodriguez looked relieved. There you are. I'm sorry. You okay? I almost told her everything. Instead, I just had a difficult afternoon. She squeezed my shoulder. Take your time. Kindness. Simple. Quiet. No conditions attached. Funny how strangers sometimes treat us better than family. Around 8:30, Marcus walked through the restaurant doors. Perfect tailored suit. Designer watch. Confident smile. Except, he wasn't alone. Beside him walked an elegant woman wearing a white business dress. Tall. Beautiful. Comfortable beside him. Too comfortable, Mrs. Rodriguez whispered. I thought your husband said he was entertaining clients. I stared. So did I. Marcus noticed me. For the briefest second, his smile vanished, then returned. Cold, calculated, almost amused. He walked directly toward my serving station. Not to hug me, not to explain. To perform. Naomi. His voice was loud enough for nearby tables. We need to talk. The restaurant gradually grew quieter. I glanced at the woman beside him. She didn't look uncomfortable. She looked expectant. Marcus reached inside his briefcase, removed a thick envelope, placed it into my hands. I've decided to end this marriage. The words landed harder than any slap. I deserve someone who matches the life I've built. Gasps spread across nearby tables. You've been holding me back for years. I couldn't speak. He continued anyway. I've already signed everything. His grin widened. All you need to do is accept reality. The elegant woman folded her arms. A tiny smile touched her lips, as if she'd rehearsed this moment with him. My fingers tightened around the envelope. Inside, divorce papers, freshly signed. Official. Legal. Real. Marcus leaned closer. Quiet enough that only I could hear. You'll never belong in my world. Then he laughed. A loud, cruel, victorious laugh. The dining room fell into stunned silence. Customers stopped eating. A child asked his mother why the waitress was crying. No one moved. No one spoke. And standing there in my server's uniform, holding the divorce papers with one hand, and the sealed envelope containing the greatest inheritance in American history hidden inside my locker only a few feet away, I finally understood what my father had meant. For 23 years, he hadn't just been protecting me from enemies. He had been protecting me from people who only loved what they thought I could give them. Marcus believed he was destroying the poorest woman in the room. He had absolutely no idea. He had just humiliated the future owner of a $50 billion empire. And before the night was over, I was about to discover that his betrayal wasn't even the darkest secret waiting inside. Bellissimo steakhouse. The restaurant remained frozen. The only sound was the soft clink of a wine glass as someone accidentally bumped the table beside them. Naomi looked down at the divorce papers once more before carefully folding them. She didn't tear them. She didn't scream. She didn't beg. Instead, she placed them gently on the nearest empty table. Marcus frowned. He had expected tears. Maybe anger. Anything except calm. That's it? He asked with a mocking laugh. No fight? Naomi slowly removed her apron. Every movement was deliberate. Measured. I've spent 6 years fighting for a marriage, she said quietly. I'm simply too tired to fight alone. Several customers exchanged uncomfortable glances. Marcus looked almost disappointed. He wanted a spectacle. Instead, he was watching dignity. The woman beside him finally spoke. You should probably sign now. It'll save everyone time. Naomi looked at her for the first time. You must be Olivia. The woman's confident smile faltered. You know my name? I've seen it on the receipts. Marcus stiffened. What receipts? The hotel restaurants. The weekend business trips. The flowers charged to your company card. Naomi met his eyes. You really thought I never noticed. Marcus's confidence cracked just enough for the room to notice. I stayed, Naomi continued, because I kept hoping you'd remember the man I married. She picked up her serving tray. But you already made your choice. Mrs. Rodriguez stepped beside Naomi. Go home, she whispered. I'll finish your tables. Naomi nodded gratefully. As she walked toward the employee lockers, every customer silently made room for her. No applause. No whispers. Just respect. Inside the locker room, Naomi opened the envelope from Attorney Whitmore once again. There, beneath the inheritance documents, was a handwritten note she hadn't noticed earlier. People will show you who they are when they believe you have nothing left to offer. Don't interrupt them. Let them finish, Dad. She smiled through fresh tears. For the first time in years, she didn't feel abandoned. She felt protected. The next morning, Naomi returned to Whitmore's office. He was already expecting her. You watched them, he said. I did. And? They answered every question I didn't know I was asking. Whitmore nodded. Good. He slid another folder across the desk. This is your first lesson. Inside wasn't a bank statement. It was a list of nearly 20,000 employees, factories, hospitals, scholarship programs, research foundations, community housing projects. This isn't just wealth, Whitmore said. It's responsibility. Naomi slowly turned the pages. My father built all this? He hoped you would build what comes next. Over the next several weeks, Naomi didn't buy a mansion. She didn't purchase designer clothes. She didn't announce herself online. Instead, she visited the businesses anonymously. She spoke with janitors, receptionists, security guards, warehouse workers. She wanted to know how people were actually being treated. One warehouse manager was quietly stealing employee bonuses. He was dismissed. A scholarship fund that had nearly been cut was expanded. An aging neighborhood clinic received millions in new equipment. Employees had no idea the quiet woman asking questions was now the owner. Marcus, meanwhile, celebrated his divorce, his promotion, his relationship with Olivia. He posted smiling photographs online. Caption after caption spoke about new beginnings. What he didn't know was that his company's biggest financing deal depended on one investor, Brooks Global Holdings. The acquisition meeting was scheduled 3 weeks later. Marcus spent days preparing the presentation that he believed would launch him into executive leadership. He rehearsed every line, bought a new suit, even practiced his handshake. The conference room overlooked the Chicago skyline. Executives filled every seat. Marcus adjusted his tie. This is our future, his CEO whispered. The representative from Brooks Global is personally attending. The doors opened. Everyone stood. Marcus smiled confidently, until he saw Naomi walk in. Not in a waitress uniform, but in a tailored navy suit. Whitmore walked beside her. So sorry to keep everyone waiting, he said. I'd like to introduce the chairwoman of Brooks Global Holdings. He smiled toward Naomi. Ms. Naomi Brooks Carter. Silence. Marcus didn't blink. Couldn't. Olivia's face turned pale. The CEO looked from Marcus to Naomi. Back to Marcus? You know each other? Marcus opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Naomi answered calmly. We were married. The room became painfully quiet. Were? She placed the signed divorce papers on the polished conference table. As of yesterday, yes. Marcus looked as if the floor had disappeared beneath him. Naomi never raised her voice. She never mocked him. She simply conducted the meeting. She asked difficult questions, found weaknesses in the proposal, pointed out ethical concerns Marcus had ignored. By the end of the presentation, Brooks Global declined the partnership. Not because of revenge, because the numbers didn't justify the risk. Business. Nothing personal. That hurt Marcus more than anger ever could. Months later, Bellissimo Steakhouse hosted its annual employee appreciation dinner. This year, every staff member received full health care, benefits funded by a new anonymous foundation. Mrs. Rodriguez later discovered the donor's name. She cried. Naomi never forgot where she came from. She didn't measure success by the number of companies she owned. She measured it by how many people no longer had to choose between paying rent and buying medicine. One evening, Naomi visited her father's grave. She placed fresh white lilies beside the headstone. I finally understand, she whispered. You weren't trying to make me rich. A gentle breeze moved through the trees. You were trying to make sure money never became the reason people loved me. She smiled. And now I know the difference. Marcus eventually heard about the scholarships, the housing projects, the employee relief fund, the hospitals. For the first time, he understood exactly what he had thrown away. Not $50 billion. A woman whose greatest strength had never been her inheritance. It had always been her character. And that's something no divorce paper can take away. Sometimes betrayal doesn't destroy your future. It removes the people who were standing in its way. If this story made you think differently about loyalty, self-worth, and second chances, let me know in the comment and don't forget to subscribe.